start shooting, but then again, better than 0 for 7, and then they got hot. Oh, behind the back, assist there. Oh, really? Into Whitney, that is a thing of beauty.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to Basketball in the Mountains. This is episode 31, and as always, I am your host, Tyler King with the Denver Gazette. And we're 30 episodes in now, and we've been talking a lot about all the NBA and college teams in the time zone. And as we've gotten to this point in the summer, it's really good to dive in and talk about some of the teams that we don't always talk about. And I've always stated since I started this podcast back in February that one of the big reasons I wanted to do it was to talk with and some of the key coaches and players and all of the figures here in the Mountain Time Zone that make what I feel like the area as a whole such an underrated basketball market. And for the first time, we have a very special guest on the show today, one of the coaches from the Mountain Time Zone, and it is Northern Colorado's Steve Smiley. The Bears are coming off a Big Sky regular season championship and appearance in the NIT. But Steve, you guys are getting ready for a trip to Portugal in a week or so. But how's your summer been going? I appreciate you being the first, non-media guest on Basketball Mountains.
Well, first of all, Tyler, thanks for having me. I love talking about the Bears basketball hoops, kind of brand and the same thing on a bigger picture. I'm from the state, right? And so basketball out here, I agree with you that I think there's a lot of special things that go on, in our state. High school, college, obviously, with the Nuggets getting that championship a couple of years ago. So I think the state's in a good spot, but I love talking about it. But things are good. It's been busy. It's been a good busy. This level's always busy now because there's not many breaks left. You got to sign your team all the way, push until who knows, almost to June, July, whatever it is. And usually this time of year, we have a little bit of a break, but not this year because we are full speed practicing to get ready for, as you mentioned, our foreign trip to Portugal, which I think we leave in like 8 days. And so we're trying to get as much out of the practices as possible. I feel like that's probably the most important part of these trips is the practices, getting to know your team better, your guys. So it's going really well.
I want to start off this conversation by asking about how maybe this offseason, if it's been different at all after having such a very successful season last year, kind of putting yourself on the map in terms of the Big Sky. You guys have been in contention the last couple of years, getting pretty close to that NCAA tournament berth. I know you're after. Has anything about what you guys were able to do last season changed how you've gone about this offseason?
No, I don't think so. I think that it's gotten our community more excited. I think we've got great support from the community, but I think that when you get over the hump, right? When we won at Weber State the last night of the regular season to win that regular season championship, and then we shared it with Montana, who was another great team. But to get over the hump, like the excitement that night, the next several days, we get back to campus, we have all these people here waiting for us, and cutting down the nets. And I think that that's a big thing for a school like ours. And so I think in that sense, it's been there's a lot of momentum and excitement and things like that. But the day to day, no, not really. I mean, regardless of whether you win or lose, what you got to brace yourself for is for most of us is as soon as that season's over, you're going to have, individual meetings with your players. You're going to have a couple guys that graduate. You're going to have a couple that go to the portal because they played really well and now they have phenomenal opportunities financially. And then you're going to have a couple other players that might go to the portal because they don't have a great role or opportunity, at their current spot. At the end of the day, you got to sign half your team probably, and it just moves right away. So, in that sense, it's like, you got to stop and smell the roses a little bit. You got to enjoy these things. I think it's important. We agonize over the losses so much. So when you do win and win at that, at that highest level for us, you got to enjoy it and appreciate it, but you also can't stay on that mountaintop forever.
What's the biggest key to building off a year like you had last year? Like you said, the momentum has been big for you guys, especially with the on-campus support. I know, like you said, that is so big for a program like you're just getting people invested now more than ever. It's as important to get them invested monetarily. Just kind of what's been the biggest thing that you've wanted to focus on this offseason to kind of, continue that momentum and make sure it pays off?
Well, I think the first thing is trying to hold on to as many of your current players as possible. Like the retention side of things, And, I look at last year, we had this great year. We had 7 returners on that team and 9 new players. So it was a 7-9 split. This current year now, we have 8 returners, 8 new guys. So we've actually retained a little bit more than the previous year. Obviously, we were hoping that to be like a 9-7 or a 10-6 split, but to be 8-8. And we're very grateful for the players that stayed with us and are looking, specifically guys that are looking to finish their careers with us. We have 4 players that will graduate this year that stayed with us. And so to have that's big. And so I think, building on it, I just don't think you can put a price tag on experiencing winning. And so to have guys, within the program, 8 returners, but also a lot of guys that played a lot of minutes, guys like, Brock Wisney, Quinn Danker, Zach Block, and then Egan Shields, Will Humer, 5 guys that really helped us out last year to win a championship. They know how hard it is. They also do a great job of, all of our returners of setting the standard of what we do every day, whether it's in the weight room, whether it's in practice, team meetings, whatever it is. So I think it makes our job easier, but it's just been trying to attack it. And so, like you said, going out there, spending a lot of time, connecting with the community, raising money, things like that. There's just so many different pressures right now in college basketball to stay competitive, and it's difficult. And so we got to really put a lot of time into it.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to go next, was with the guys that you have coming back. Because like you said, you have 2 starters coming back in Brock and Zach. And then Quinn, I think, played over 20 minutes a game for you guys off the bench last year. And then you've obviously got some other returners as well. Because when you lose players like Langston Reynolds, who obviously had a great opportunity to go play for Nico Medved at Minnesota, you guys have been kind of at the forefront of that at the mid-major level of giving guys opportunities and having them go on to do big, successful things at other programs. We'll talk about Dalton and Saint later in the podcast, but you also lose Isaiah Hawthorne and Jaron Riley, some guys that were really, really productive players for you. How nice, like you mentioned the retention side of it, how nice is it to go into this summer knowing you've got 2 starters back and a bunch of other guys you feel like you can count on? You mentioned how impactful it is to have those guys experience winning. Just how comfortable or how at ease are you when you have such a nice returning group like that?
It helps. And, and you look back to last year's team, we felt like we had 7 starters, and that's how we kind of sold it to the guys. Obviously, it was Jaron Riley, Zach Block, Langston Reynolds, Isaiah Hawthorne, Brock Wisney. So as you mentioned, Zach and Brock started pretty much every game, but we also felt like Quinn Danker and Marcel McCreary were starters as well and played starter minutes. So, for instance, we were at Idaho. Isaiah Hawthorne was sick. He couldn't play, so Quinn Danker started that game. We didn't miss a beat. So we actually feel like we have 3 starters back with Quinn, Zach, and Brock, even though, Quinn technically didn't start every game. He's for sure a starter. I mean, he knows what it is. He's going to be one of our best players. So to have 3 to 5 spots, just in the sense of on a day-to-day, like, it helps out so much. It's interesting because you feel it more for the spots where, and forget the starting, but just the experience, right? Like, when you don't have an experienced player in a spot for anything we do, whether it's installing offense or your basic defensive concepts, you can feel it. You can feel it just takes longer. It's we always say it's right now we're in the ABCs, not the XYZs. You could do the math thing and say, hey man, we're in pre-algebra right now, but some of these guys want to be in calculus, right? So trying to blend the preparation and the practice based off your roster, that's the art and the science of this whole thing, I think. But to have guys like Quinn, Zach, and Brock that, 1, are winners, 2, are extremely intelligent and know exactly how we want to play. They know the system. It's like we have 3 other coaches on the court. It is definitely a very good advantage for us.
And I wanted to ask about some of the newcomers, because obviously like I said, you've had a lot of success in the transfer portal the last couple of years and finding maybe some under-recruited guys and developing them as well. Just kind of what about the newcoming group has stood out to you? Has anybody really stuck out to you that you feel like could be a really big piece of this year's team?
Yeah, I think we need several of these guys to be a big piece of the team. And I think, again, even before you get to the new guys, I think guys like Egan Shields, Egan's a really talented player, and he helped us last year, but I think he's due for a jump. We had a couple red shirts last year, Arik Muyin, Hunter Caldwell, that are doing really good. And so before you get to the new guys that had been in-house that people haven't seen, Will Humer played a little bit last year. He's done a really good job so far. He was a transfer a year ago from the Mountain West from San Jose State. And so you're going to see some players that are new but are in-house. But then our new guys – we have 8 new guys. I think, you kind of assume that the 3 portal guys will really help you out. And that would be Ibu Yamazaki. And Ibu, we think is going to be a really good player for us. We haven't been around Ibu much recently. He was here for the start of summer. He flew back to Japan. He's from Japan originally, trying out for their national team, their Olympic team, not like a U18, like their real Olympic team. They started with 48 players, and he got it down to 14, and they took 12. And so, like, he is really good. He's actually coming back as we record this. He'll be back here tomorrow, and we'll be able to start practice in 2 days. So he'll be here 1 week before the foreign trip, which for us is great. He'll be in great shape. He's played against, great players all summer, but to get him back to learn the system. But when he was here, we were very impressed. Vince Delano is a transfer from Portland. Has proven himself to be a very talented player, double-digit score in games against Oregon, Gonzaga. Best game of the year was probably against Denver University last year. And so a guy like Vince, like, starting to learn his game, he should be a big piece. This Ring Neary, who's a transfer from UMKC, is super talented. And he's the type of guy, there's not a lot of guys in our league like him. He's a legitimate 6'9" with a 7'3" wingspan, and he has guard skills. Like, we just got to figure out, like, he's still young. He's a transfer, but he's a freshman transfer. So, like, he's working so hard. So we got guys like that. Caden Erickson is a junior college transfer from Eastern Arizona. His JUCO team went 55-11 in the 2 years he was there. They went 29-4 last year, one of the best teams in the country. He's been tremendous this entire summer. Tough, big-time motor, aggressive attacking. And so those are just examples. But I tell you, like, there's been nobody, and usually, like, there are players. Chance White, our fourth portal transfer from Louisiana Lafayette. He's actually the last player we signed, and he's 2 years there. So Chance has done a really good job too. So point being that we need these guys to be good. There's no doubt about it. But it's still so early, and that's why this foreign trip's so great. Like, we do a lot of things throughout the summer to stat these guys and grade these guys and rank these guys. Because eventually we have to figure out, we have 16 players. We're going to play 9 max. And so how do you separate that out? It's taking some time to do that, and we're just kind of trying to figure that out.
Sticking with recruiting, I wanted to ask about, obviously you've had a lot of success recruiting the state of Colorado in the last couple of years. That's obviously for you as a Denver area native, that's a big thing for you. You've got a handful of guys from the state on the roster this year. Do you feel like it is still maybe an under-recruited area, and that's just something you guys have been able to take advantage of in the last couple of years? Obviously, Langston was a Colorado prep kid. Yep. Dalton is from Thornton. You got a couple, like I said, a couple guys on the roster now that'll play big roles that are Colorado kids. Like, how cool is it for you to see guys like that thrive? And then, like, how fun is it for you to stay in the state and go to these high schools and go to these prep programs and AAU tournaments and all that kind of stuff and see guys from the state that you'd love to bring to your program?
I think it's still maybe a little under-recruited, but not as much as I've been here a decade now. Yeah. And really, when I was lucky enough to come back out here with Coach Jeff Linder, who I was his assistant coach, and when Coach Linder and I came out here, he was from Boise. I came in from Weber State. We're both from Colorado. We felt like at UNC, when the Bears were really good with Coach Tad Boyle, they had a very good core of in-state players. Neil Kingman, Devin Beitzel, Terry Anderson, Will Figures, Taylor Montgomery. I'm going to miss a couple names here and there, but, like, as examples, some really good. And then you can't have your whole team from Colorado. That's not realistic. But part of the reason we came out is we felt like that had really dipped at UNC, and we're both from Colorado. We have those relationships, and we feel like we can steal some kids. And at the time, CSU with Larry Eustace, they were just taking transfers, junior college kids, so we didn't have to worry about them. If a kid's good enough to go to CU, we're not going to get him in, anyways. But that's might be like one player a year. And then, at the time, Wyoming was dabbling a little bit, nothing crazy. DU at the time with, I believe Coach Joe Scott was there at that time. Such a specific system with the Princeton system that he ran. We felt like, hey, we can steal a ton of kids. And we did. And we got Jalen Sanders from Valor Christian was the first guy that kind of took a chance on us. And then that allowed us to get a better chance to get Bodie Hume. And getting Bodie Hume was huge. Big Sky freshman of the year. To get him, what helped to get him was to get the Gatorade Player of the Year, Sam Maston. So Sam Maston was a 6'8" Player of the Year at Rock Canyon. At that time, actually 5'8" Player of the Year. Jalen Sanders the year before was the 4'8" Player of the Year. And Bodie Hume was the 3'8" Player of the Year in Colorado. And we felt like that was starting to give us true credibility within the state. And then we started winning, right? So that's the biggest thing, is you got to win. But I think that kind of segued on to eventually, like you said, a Langston Reynolds, a Brock Wisney, guys like that. Now, a Tanner Burkita, who was a top 2, top 3 player in Colorado last year, is doing a great job for us as a true freshman now. I think that is helping tremendously, and we're always going to recruit the state. We know the state. I'm from the state. Coach Reed on my staff's from the state. Coach Klop's from the state. Coach Colin Goss went to school here at UNC. Dorian Green's the 6th leading scorer in the history of CSU men's basketball. So he's not from the state, but he's been in the state. So we have a ton of connections to the state of Colorado, and we do feel that we can steal a couple kids every single year. That's always going to be an emphasis, is to try to kind of build it, put that fence around our state, and build with a couple really good players in the state.
You mentioned that you've been in Greeley for about a decade now. Obviously, you're going into year 6 as a head coach. The previous time you're under Coach Linder, like you said, who's now at Texas Tech as the top assistant there for a great program that Coach McCaslin is running. Elite 8 team this past year. A couple minutes away from the Final Four. Right. Just for you, how have things changed over the course of the decade? Not just with everything going around in the sport, but within the program, how you guys have evolved, whether it's on the court, off the court, just how you've gotten to where you are now, where you're just super happy with the progress you guys have been able to make, especially in the last 2, 3, 4 years.
I think we definitely just continue to adjust and adapt, but I do think too, like that phrase, same old boring winners. There's certain things that are very simple that help you win if you're willing to do them. And I think, going back to, the foundation that Coach Linder built, some of the stuff is exactly the same today. Obviously, I've got to be my own self with my personality. I'm different than Coach Linder and et cetera, et cetera. But so I coach it different, but the formula, the structure, the foundation is still the same, in my opinion. What's changed is everything outside of us, things we can't control. The portal, the NIL. I mean, it's changing, within it'll change in the next 10 minutes when we're still talking, like, the rules. And now there's, executive orders from the president, and then there's this, and you're chasing a moving goalpost, and that gets hard. And so that's changed. So I do think we've had to adapt a little bit. So last year, for instance, we haven't had the ability to play as many younger players. They've had to kind of wait their turn. And that's like, if you look at the Big Sky last year, I used to say it was the top 3 teams, but I was wrong. It was the top 5 teams in our league last year. Not one true freshman played 1 minute on the top 5 teams in the league. That's wild. Yeah, it's crazy. And now we had a couple of freshmen, but they're like Egan Shields, but he was a redshirt freshman. There was not one true straight from high school, prep school kid that played on the top 5. Now there was freshmen on the lower end teams. So we've had to find ways, like everybody else, to stay older and get older and try to get players from junior college or the portal, whatever it is. And I think too, the thing that we've had to adjust and adapt is, like everybody else, just knowing like you're probably not going to hold on to every player for 4 years anymore. There's still examples. Brock Wisney, Zach Block. Zach's in his 5th year here. Brock's in his 4th. So it's not like it doesn't happen, but it's not going to be that journey for all of your players.
One other thing I wanted to ask about was just because obviously I don't think people realize that you guys are still only like 20 years in, not even 20 years in as a D1 program. True. Like it's pretty crazy the jump and everything you guys have made. Obviously, the program made the tournament in 2011, the Division I tournament in 2011 for the first time. What is the biggest key going forward for you guys to being a consistent team at the top of the Big Sky, which has consistently been a very, very good mid-major conference and is sending, one team to the tournament every year that nobody really wants to play? I mean, what is the key to being at the top and being that team that perennially, just like you were last year, is fighting and in that Big Sky championship game and trying your hardest to get into that NCAA tournament?
Yeah, I think 2 things. I think one is trying to have as much stability as possible. Like you look at our staff, I've been very fortunate to have extreme staff stability in a lot of teams. And again, it's just kind of part of the thing too, in terms of this profession. They got to get 2 new coaches this year, another coach this year, and there's not stability within the staff. So I think for us, we've had the majority of the staff the same the entire time. Just a little bit of movement, but not much at all. Recently, I think we've had the same staff for 2 years where there's been no movement, and that includes our strength coach, our athletic trainer, who we view as part of our staff, our sports psychologist, our 5 assistants. In the last 2 years, we've had no movement. I think that is extremely helpful, and I think that helps us to probably exceed expectations, which leads to the second thing is you need resources. And that's where, finding different ways to, again, generate revenue. And, how do you find a way in this new world of opt in, opt out, rev share, NIL, pay, right? Like there's so much going on. That's the challenge, not just for us, but for every team in our league is like, okay, like the rules have changed and players are getting paid in-house, out of house, whatever it is. How do you keep your resources, aligned with trying to chase a championship? I think that's the challenge for all of us.
Are you do you obviously you always coaches want to get more and more and more in terms of the resource aspect, but do you feel like you guys have made a lot of progress in your time that you are competing at the level you need to to be in the Big Sky?
Yeah, I think my guy, if this is on video, my guy Don Meyer here, right? So Don Meyer is my coach, and so the legendary coach, winningest coach in the history of basketball before he passed away. He would always say, "You got to run a champagne program on a beer budget." And I think that's true. I think that all of these places we're not maxed out in resources by any means. And we can either complain about it or we can just try to find some way, right? Try to find some way to work with what we got and just get it done. So I am very pleased. I see our administration continually trying to help out. Our donor base has been tremendous since I've been here. I've spent a lot of time. Like that was one of my folks is, okay, we got to find a way to grow. And I didn't know it was going to be about the NIL, but just like we got to grow money, right? Just for like the foreign trip that we're going on. That's all privately raised. That's not from the school. So like, how do you raise money to just, again, run a champagne program on a beer budget? I think that's the goal. But we have seen absolutely, I mean, our administration, we've opted in, we're trying to figure out ways to do it. What does this revenue share mean? What's in-house contracts look like? So we're being very proactive. But at the same point in time, we'll never have like crazy money. Like, everyone hears this $20 million house settlement cap, even though there's no 20 million. And so we've got to find ways to get creative for our program, but for the department as well. So I feel good about it, but it's also something like we got a lot of room to continue to grow in that.
I alluded to this earlier in the show, but obviously this summer, big summer for some of your former players, both Dalton Connect and St. Thomas playing at NBA Summer League. That's huge for a program like yours to have multiple guys trying to make an NBA roster. Obviously, Dalton's got a full-time contract as a former first-round pick, but it's cool to see St. Thomas playing for a team that I grew up rooting for, the Sixers.
So cool.
What was that like for you, just kind of watching both those guys in Vegas play pretty well?
I thought it was awesome. And it's funny because if we weren't out, one, recruiting, and then two, my son was actually playing club basketball as well. And it's his last summer. So I'm out there trying to soak that up and enjoy watching him play one more time. If it wasn't for that, I probably would have gone out to the summer league, try to see those guys, support those guys. I mean, to have two players out there at the same point in time is awesome. And we have a couple other players that, probably would have made it out to that. Guys like Isaiah Hawthorne and Jaron Ridley. They're both trying to get 1 year back. They filed waivers to try to and they wouldn't play for us. They're in the portal, the graduates, the whole thing. But I don't know I don't know the chances they'll get the waivers, but it was worth trying. And so they were eliminated from playing that. But those two guys were going to play it too. So like to have 2, 3, 4 guys in the NBA Summer League is pretty dang special, right? So yeah, I think that, but having Dalton and Saint, obviously Dalton being a proven player, being a first-round draft pick, he's already had some phenomenal games, in the NBA. And then Saint, I'm so proud of Saint too. I mean, Saint's worked so hard, and Saint had a really good year. Everyone's like, Saint had a disappointing year. I'm like, he was like the leading minute guy at USC, but his role changed. But that's what makes Saint so great. Is like he could be your scorer, he could be your point guard, he could be your forward. Like he's a chameleon. And I was proud of how Saint played this year. And so to see him in the summer league, he was really excited about it. And then to kind of see what step happens for him next. Obviously, I think Dalton's solid with the Lakers, but to see what happens to Saint, I'm really excited to see where he goes next.
All right, Coach, one last thing before we get you out of here. We've alluded to it a couple times. I mentioned it throughout the podcast, but this upcoming trip to Portugal, obviously you've talked about how important it is. Just what gets you so excited about this trip other than the 10 practices you get leading up, and how important is it to have something like this leading into, a season like you're about to have coming up, where I think we're 100 days from the start of the season as we're recording this today on Friday?
I think it's really important. Some people are starting to question if they're going to do these because, again, every dollar going forward to go to revenue sharing. Well, we started putting money away 4 years ago, and we knew like we couldn't just raise all this money in 1 year. And so we were trying to be strategic and just put, a fourth away, a fourth, so that we had it done, and it worked great. But going into it, it's just more time around your team. So, obviously, naturally, that all of our teams are so new now. It's like we used to talk about like in recruiting. We are very relationship driven. So like we talk about like cooking a rack of ribs. Okay. So if you're cooking a rack of ribs, what's the fastest way to do it? You can just throw them in the microwave and heat them up and they're going to dry out, but they're edible, right? They're hot, but like they're not any good. But all the way on the other end is probably like that big smoker grill. You got to put them in there for like 2 days and they just marinate. That's how we try to recruit. The same thing with our team. But now, like, you don't have the smoker grill time with your team. So I look at most of our teams are microwaves right now, but at least with this extra time in the summer for the foreign trip, maybe we're more like the grill or the oven or something, right? So
Toaster oven, air fryer, there you go.
Something, the air fryer, I don't know. So I think that's really helped out. I think too, like my first time doing a foreign trip, which was again in Puerto Rico, we were down there with a couple other teams at the same hotel. So at the same hotel was High Point, and Tubby Smith was their head coach at the time. And I remember Coach Smith grabbed me, and obviously he's a legend, right? In national champ at Kentucky, and I mean literally like the legend of basketball. And he was saying, "Hey man," he's like, "I'm just telling you, all of my best teams have always been on the years that we've done foreign trips." And I was like, "Well, it sounds good," but then I thought back, the year that we won 26 games with Coach Linder was our foreign trip. And then our first foreign trip when I was the head coach, we lost in the Big Sky tournament championship. We won 22 games. We got to the CBI Final Four. We beat a Florida Atlantic team, which was the same team that went to March Madness Final Four the next year with Coach Dusty May and Vlad Golden and, Elijah and all those different guys. We had an awesome, awesome team. So I'm hoping that we have a great year. But again, you can't, we have a foreign trip, it'll be a great year. It's not about that. But I do think that it speeds your learning curve. I think it gives you a chance to be better earlier, right, in the season when other teams are still trying to figure themselves out. Hopefully we can kind of know who we are and maybe steal some of these tough early season challenges, road games, money games, who knows. But to have a great year in our league, you have to have a good non-con. You have to find a way to, be 7-6 or 8-5, which is really hard to do because we all play these tough money games. Maybe a foreign trip gets us ahead of the curve where we can have a really good non-con. By Christmas, we're all caught up, in my opinion. But to be good in early November, maybe this helps out.
All right, Steve, I appreciate you being one of the first coaching guests on Basketball in the Mountains. This was a great conversation. Best of luck to you guys this season. Like I said, you guys have had a lot of success the last couple seasons, postseason in 3 of the last 4 seasons, and just on the cusp of making that first NCAA tournament for you as a head coach. So I appreciate you doing this.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being on. Thanks, Tyler.
All right, that'll do it from today's episode of Basketball in the Mountains. Thanks again to Coach Steve Smiley from the Northern Colorado Bears for being the first special guest on this episode. This is, like I said, one of the big reasons I wanted to do this podcast was to spotlight some of the maybe undercovered teams in the region, especially on the college side. There's a lot of great programs in the Mountain Time Zone, and Steve's program in Greeley is certainly one of them. One I hope to get a chance to come up and watch in person again this season, because they've been a lot of fun to watch the last couple of years with, like I said, a couple NBA guys coming through that place, and probably more to come for sure for that program. So thanks everybody again for listening. Make sure to go rate, review, subscribe to the podcast on Spotify or Apple, or subscribe to my YouTube channel if you prefer to watch on there. And once again, thanks everybody for listening, and thanks to Coach Smiley for coming on, and have a good weekend.